Hello my dear friends and welcome to my channel. Don't forget to make yourself a cup of tea because today we have very interesting stories and one of them is a story about terrible parents who decided to abandon their baby girl, but 16 years later they demand her to donate bone marrow for their son. Subscribe if you haven't and I hope you'll enjoy these stories. I'm a 38-year-old woman. I have a great career, a loving boyfriend, 31, great pets and friends. I have never ever wanted kids. 5 years ago, I ended a relationship with a man named Jason, name changed, who I thought wanted the same things that I did. We had been together for 2 years in 2015. We'd travel together, read comics, play video games and do all kinds of fun things. I had always been honest with Jason that I never wanted kids. He told me he didn't either. Then, in the summer of that year, I began to notice changes in him. He would talk about how great our friends' kids are. He'd try to get me to spend time with his nephews, even though I wasn't close to them. He also began talking to my parents way more than usual. Then one evening, he said he wanted to have dinner with my whole family. I found this a bit strange as I don't often spend time with my family. But for him, I agreed. We were having dinner, my parents and siblings, my brother and sister, were there. Then, he dropped a bomb on me. He got down on one knee and said, "I love you. I want you to be the mother of my children." What the actual hell was the first thing that came out of my mouth. We hadn't talked about getting married, much less kids. I never wanted kids and wasn't ready for marriage. I took him to another room and asked him what the hell he was doing. He dropped another bomb and told me he had been talking to my parents about us getting married and starting a family. Let that sink in. He talked to my parents, not me, about our future. He said he had asked my dad's permission. My dad's permission before he asked for my consent. I was furious. All this was obviously meant to pressure me into saying yes. My mother, being nosy, walked right into the room we were in and asked what was wrong and why I had not said yes. I told her and the whole family that they needed to leave. When they left, I tore Jason a new idiot. I asked him how dare he assume that I was going to marry him and have kids with him when I had made it very clear that I did not want those things. He told me he was hoping that I would grow up and want something meaningful. He had the gall to act like I was the bad person in all of this. I threw him out and the following day, I ended the relationship for good. My parents were pissed at me. My mom cried about how she had been looking forward to getting grandkids from me and how I had let her down. My siblings too told me I had made a huge mistake by letting such a nice guy go. My dad actually told me to apologize to him. Their behavior told me that my desires and consent didn't matter to them one bit. They just wanted me to follow the same life script that they did. Till today, I haven't forgiven them, mostly because they still think that they and my ex were right. My current boyfriend and I have been together for 3 years. He and I share the same passions, so I feel much more secure when he says that he doesn't want kids. My parents and siblings are no longer a part of my life. I hardly ever call or see them, and I'm happier for it. I never spoke to Jason again, though he did try to reach out to me. He maintained contact with my parents for some time, hoping that they'd force me to change my mind. I still believe that what he did was tricky, to say the least, but I bear him no ill will, and I hope he's happy. Well, that's not the easy one. Jason seems to be a nice guy. He made just a few mistakes that he could probably understand, but that mistake cost him his love. It's a shame your couple has gone over only one mistake. I'm glad you're fine and hope Jason is fine too. Backstory. A buddy of mine's family runs a small convenience store bait and tackle shop in the US, and I help out every now and then, since I work at a gas station. Like 98% of stores, the shop is currently operating on a one toilet paper or paper towel item per family policy. My friend's dad, the owner, told me in person that no one is allowed to buy more than one per family, no ifs, ands, or buts. Cue the scene. Me, ED. Entitled Dad, EK. Embarrassed kid, SO. Store owner. I'm waiting out the last half hour of when I said I'd help run the store on my own when ED and EK walk in, decked out in fishing gear. ED grabs a packet of worms, some sodas, ice, and snacks. As he passes by the toiletry section, he grabs 4 packages of toilet paper. I'm sorry sir, but store policy is currently only one per family. I call that out across the store, but ED ignores me. He and EK select a few more things and walk up to the counter. EK is trying hard to not be seen, so I can tell he knows what's coming. Sir, unfortunately I'm only able to sell you one toilet paper package right now. Already getting angry. Well, why not? Due to the pandemic and shortage, our store is only allowing one TP item per family. Well, there's no sign back there. Yes there is, sir. There's a sign every 6 feet around the store and at the register, listing what items are being limited. Well, I know the owner, and he says it's okay for me to buy as many as I want from here. EK has now retreated to the door, clearly wanting to leave and not be here. You spoke to the owner? Getting irritated now. Yes, I did. Now are you going to ring me up or what? The owner specifically said that you could buy however much you wanted. Yes. Can you please hurry it up, I want to be on the lake soon. Sir, I know the manager didn't say anything to you, because I'd have known about it. Are you calling me a liar? I'm reporting you to the owner the next time I talk to him. Pulls out phone. How about now? What? Calling owner and putting phone on speaker. Let's call him right now. If he says it's okay, I'll ring you up and apologize. Before can say anything, SO picks up. SO. Hey what's up? Nothing much, I have here, and he says you told him he could ignore store policy on TP. SO. Can I have your name so I know who I told? ED's face breaks out in hope, thinking he's bluffed his way through this, and gives his name. SO. I don't know who the hell you are, or what the hell you're talking about. I haven't told anyone that they could ignore store policy. By purchasing more than one, you are possibly depriving others that may desperately need the TP. And if you're crapping so much that you need more than one package, I would seriously suggest you consult a doctor, not just buy more TP. If you can't follow store policy like every other customer that's come in, then you can leave. SO hangs up. Has his mouth open in shock, while EK is looking like all major holidays and his birthday are happening today. Shuts his mouth, stands in front of the register for a few seconds, shouts a final screw you and storms out of the store, leaving all his items at the counter. Oh, it's funny how he stood his ground to the last moment, knowing he's a terrible liar. I bet he hoped for some miracle, and it's all just for a TP. Well, my friend, it wasn't worth it for sure. This is a true story in China. When had her second daughter, she decided that she doesn't want her. You see, well, the family was given special permission to have 2 children, as opposed to the one-child policy. They wanted a son, and this extra girl is just an inconvenience taking up the precious spot for a boy. So, they abandoned her up without hesitation. The next year, got pregnant with a boy who was spoiled to death in the family. The girl ended up with a man more than 300 kilometers away from her original village. He and his wife had 3 pregnancy, but all ended up as miscarriage, so they adopted the girl, but divorced soon after because of the stress that came with the adoption. For 16 years, he had been raising his adopted daughter on his own. This man is just a crab farmer and is in nowhere rich, but he loved the girl as his own daughter. They were living a quiet and happy life together until one day turned up. Turns out the son got leukemia and needed bone marrow, and no one in the family had a match. So they turned to the daughter they abandoned 16 years ago, hoping that she would be a match. The father felt sorry for the 14-year-old boy. He agreed to take the girl to a hospital for a test, but he was afraid that the girl would know she was abandoned for her gender, so he made the promise to not tell her that she's adopted. The girl was a match and agreed to the procedure under the impression that she was donating for a stranger. The adoptive father then asked for a bond for the girl's health. In the beginning, he was misled into think that it would be as simple as donating blood. However, when the doctors told him that donating bone marrow is a risky procedure, he was worried that if there is any complication, he won't have any means to save his daughter. The money would be returned to if the girl remains complication-free when she's married. Refused. Then the father said don't worry about the money, but the surgery needs to be near where he is living, so he can take care of his daughter and work. Refused again, saying that it would be more expensive for them. The father hesitated, and freaking exploded. Her husband, and their eldest daughter marched to the girl's school right after class, stopped the car the girl was in, pulled open the door, grabbed the girl by her arm, and started yelling at her that she was adopted, they are her real family, and she needs to save her younger brother. The teachers had to physically intervene to stop them from taking her away. A bystander called the police. Even in the police station, kept pressuring the girl for her bone marrow. The girl was in shock after knowing that she was adopted in such a violent way and cried for a whole night. This put her into a lot of psychological stress. The next day, printed out hundreds of open letters, calling both the girl and her father by name, saying that they are cold-blooded, and the girl, in particular, is ignorant and doesn't understand morals. She even brought up the fact that the adoptive father experienced miscarriages to insult him. She emphasized that the boy is the girl's biological brother. She bolded that, just to put more pressure on the girl. She put this around the village the girl is living in, all the way to around the girl's school, so both of them can't even go back to their home. When she was asked about this later, she said she didn't think about what that would do to the girl. She even went to the village council and said that the girl is rightfully hers, and she will take the girl back and make her donate her bone marrows. Of course, she was told that the girl was legally adopted, so she has no rights over her, and if she does anything like that it would be kidnapping. She started interfering with the girl on her way to and from school. The teacher had to drive the girl to and from school for her safety, and they even got assaulted by EM's relative for their trouble. The later went onto a television program, probably wanting to bully the girl and her father into giving up her body rights. She got ripped apart on live TV. Later they found another match on the donor database, so the boy is fine. The thing is, if she had been less entitled and cruel to the girl, she would have already donated her blood marrow. She could have doomed her son to death because of this. My heart breaks from the thought that this story is true. I'm happy for the son who made it, but shame on his mother, she did too many terrible things. It's even hard to say what life she deserves for that. So, several months ago, my granny-in-law was in an accident that was not her fault. This resulted in both her fake leg and real leg getting broken, among other injuries. Granny is just full of rage. She's 80 years of rage, people. She had fought hard for decades over wanting to be independent and never be put in a home or become someone's burden. She wanted to live in her own home, take care of herself, and die in her own bed. Sadly, the accident made that impossible now. She'll never be able to walk under her own power again, and she's hurting herself using a walker, or whatever you call those wheeled things. She wants to live at home, however. She knew she would need someone there constantly, and hired a day nurse and a night nurse to come take care of her. She refuses to move into any home, relatives or otherwise. Well, in an effort to get her out of the house, my wife and I would take her out. Yes, we were being very careful about where we were taking her and going all out on masks and antibacterial everything. We tried to take her places that weren't too crowded, but also wheelchair accessible. Well, a mall that was about an hour out of town had reopened. It's a sad, sad place because many of the stores were closed and possibly would never get any new business. It was a dying building, but the food court still had excellent food. We went there today. The kids were off playing with some friends, so it was just me wifey, me granny, and myself, taking laps around the mall, taking turns on who pushes granny. Now, granny was wearing a long skirt, but didn't have her fake leg on. You couldn't really see that she had one leg, unless you were looking very closely. So, I can kind of understand why this ED thought that my granny had two legs. See, we got hungry and went to the food court to get healthy, food to eat. We pulled up to a table and started to chow down. Then, ED appeared. I don't even need to transcribe this part. It's a dime a dozen story about an entitled parent that wants the wheelchair that someone is currently using. We say no, she says no and cannot walk, and the ED demands it for his son. He was sitting at another table, looking like he was out cold, he was that tired looking. Granny finally had enough and looked at him right in the eye and said, "Young man. This is my chair, which I need to move about. I don't care how tired your kid is, he cannot have this. I would not be able to walk at all." ED, obviously, replies, "You may be old, but you don't need it at all. You can walk, you old crone." Granny got red in the face. "Old crone? Looky here, little boy, I may be old, but I can still kick your butt, even if my only leg is in a bad shape." ED scoffs at her. "I bet you're only faking about having one leg. Granny looked like she was going to yell again. Except, she just grinned. She turned her chair to him and lifted up her skirt. She showed him that she was, indeed, missing a leg. "Think I'm faking here, kid?" She goes in a snide tone. "Think this is a fake stump?" Edie looked embarrassed and tried to talk. Granny wouldn't let him, she actually lifted up her stump a bit. "Why don't you touch my stump? Come on. It might be a real stump, might be fake. Touch it and see." "Touch my stump? If it's a fake stump, the chair is yours." The guy backed off and started for his table. Except, Granny started to wheel after him, yelling at him, "Come on. Touch my stump, you know you want to. Touch it." My wife was cracking up at this, so I had to be the one to grab her chair and bring her back. The ED picked his son up and carried him out of there quickly. Granny was grumbling about how rude that man was, but she looked so damn proud of herself. The few people there that were in hearing range was also laughing, although 2 people looked disgusted at my granny-in-law. Screw them. At least it got some of her anger out of her system. The situation calmed her down a great deal and cheered her up. "Your grandma-in-law is a brilliant woman, she taught a good lesson to this entitled kid. I wish your grandma great health." This was a long time ago. I hardly have any contact with that part of the family anymore, but I do still talk to my dad once in a while. My dad needed a car for a while, so I loaned him mine. When I went to get the car back, the back end was smashed in. My dad tells me how he was at a red light and the car was rear-ended. Of course, I asked the normal questions about fault and insurance and everything else. He tells me the other guy's insurance company sent him a check for the damages, but it wasn't enough to cover the repairs, a lie, so he didn't have the car repaired. Instead, he spent the money. My dad and I have the same first and last name, but a different middle name, so it's easy to see how he could claim the car was his and have the check written to him. When I told my dad that he should have just let me know about the accident and let me handle the claim, he says, "Why should you get anything? You weren't in an accident." I was. We had an argument about this, but none of my dad's argument was even anywhere close to being valid. He also just wasn't hearing any of what I had to say. I asked my dad to leave the car at his house for a few days and said I would arrange to have it picked up and repaired. A couple of days later, I went to his house, but I didn't see the car, so I thought he wasn't home. When I knocked, he answered. My younger brother was also there, which was surprising because he was supposed to be away at college, which I was helping pay for, but that's another story. I told my dad I was there to pick up the car. He says that was impossible because he sold it. I asked him why he did that. He says, "You seemed so pissed off about the damage, I figured you'd just want me to go ahead and sell it so you didn't have to deal with it anymore." I was making payments on the car and asked my dad how he could have sold it without the title. He told me he just had the guy fill out a lost title form or something like that. I don't even know the details on it. I told him that I thought that was going to be a problem when the guy tries to register the car and finds out there's a lien on the car. My dad says that's the buyer's problem, not mine. When I asked him how much he got for it, he told me he got $3,000. Even with the damage, it was worth closer to $7,000, but definitely no less than $5,000. I asked my dad for the money. He told me he already spent it. Then he goes into this rant about how many bills he has and how he's even paying for my brother's college. Not true, plus, my brother was sitting right there. He dropped out, but didn't tell me, even though he kept cashing the checks I sent. I had very little contact with my parents after that, and I think I only actually saw them one time since then, which was around the time I got married, but not at the wedding because they refused to go. None of this was all that surprising, though. I never should have even loaned the car to my dad in the first place. If I got it right, not only did he sell your car without permission, he also tricked you into paying for your brother who is sitting at home. You are his son, not an ATM. Why some parents cannot just understand and accept it. Well guys, that's it for today. If you end up enjoying this video, please consider subscribing, and if you missed the last episode on the channel, I'm gonna link it right here. The story about a woman who kicked OP's service dog to prove her point, and poor doggo ended up in a vet clinic. Check it out if you haven't, and I'll see you in my next video.